space.
It sounds like a very exciting mix of, of people who are on the cutting edge of finance, and I'm sure that another advantage would be that because these assets are illiquid, I'm sure some of these that have deep research capabilities are able to find that they're maybe able to get deals that they wouldn't be able to in more liquid markets, like, for example, the public equity markets.
That's exactly right. They're just so over-invested, because obviously everybody knows about it. They've been investing in them for hundreds of years. You have to start to come up with, various financial tricks, if you will, whether it's leverage or using algorithms and patterns and things of that nature, rather than investing on a fundamental basis. Because these markets are so crowded, you have to do those sorts of things. But with these sorts of asset classes, you're able to invest on a more fundamental basis because they aren't overcrowded. So it's an interesting, traditional approach that investors are able to take to these non-traditional asset classes.
Now, what are the most popular products, and if you could tell us, what is the dollar amount in transactions for your most popular products?
In terms of our most popular products, I would say the structured products, so that's auction rate securities, mortgage-backed securities, CDOs, asset-backed securities. The structured products is currently our biggest marketplace. It represents, I believe, somewhere south of 50% of our revenue. Then we have our private company stock market, which is our next biggest, but it is by far our fastest growing marketplace. At the beginning of last year, we had done a few $1 million in transactions of the private company stock market, and now we're closing in on $300 million in transactions, less than, 15 months later. So the private company stock market has really been accelerating. And then, our bankruptcy claims market, our restricted securities market, our LP interest market, those make up kind of the rest of the revenue. Although I can, and the volume of transactions. And although I can't speak specifically to just the corporate policy, we don't speak specifically to the dollar volume that we're doing in each of the markets. I will say that overall, SecondMarket has done about $3 billion, over $3 billion in transactions in the liquid assets. Over half of that, I'd probably say close to two-thirds of that, having come in the last 15 to 18 months.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this, and I'm sure that you get asked this quite frequently. And I believe that I've heard people from SecondMarket talk about this, so I think it's okay for me to ask, but what is Facebook's market cap according to transactions that are taking place on your platform?
Well, you're absolutely right that people do ask that. And you may have seen that value associated with SecondMarket, but, our policy, and really it's the way we've been able to be successful in the private company stock market, our policy is to work with the companies and run these markets in the ways that they want to run the secondary market for their shares. And each company has sort of a different levels of tolerances to how they want their market to be shaped. Whether you're talking about Facebook or LinkedIn or Benzinga, and we've been asked by pretty much all of the companies to not comment on their values, on what the stock is currently trading at. So you've definitely seen it out there in the public, and like I said, it's probably been associated with where things are trading over SecondMarket, but as a corporate policy, we don't comment on what the value is for specific companies.
But suffice it to say that there is a pretty good amount of excitement about Facebook still.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, of the 300 million or so, or between 250 and 300 million of private company stock transactions, I'd say over 100 million of that has been Facebook. So there definitely has been a lot of excitement around that company.
Okay. Jeremy, SecondMarket has been referred to as the Google of Wall Street. How do you foster and encourage innovation within your organization?
Yeah. I'm not sure if Google is the perfect analogy, but I do get the spirit of your question, which is the innovation that Google has been able to bring. How do we foster that? Yeah, absolutely. And so So I think there are a couple of ways. One, it definitely comes from the top down. Barry, from the very beginning, I've known him back when we were investment banking together, back when we actually went to college together. And Barry has always been a very innovative, creative guy who wants to try new things. And when you have that sort of mindset from the founder, from the guy at the top, it can't help but find its way down and make it a safe environment for experimenting. You are not going to get your head ripped off like you might at some of the traditional Wall Street firms. You're not going to get your head ripped off for trying to bring up something new and innovative. And that's one of the biggest keys to innovation, is a safe place to do it, because it's what Barry is all about. And then the second component is not only is it a safe place, not only is it Barry leading by example, but we are very much a collaborative type of company, and there's a ton of cross-pollination going on at SecondMarket. If you look at, now we're not an investment bank, but I'll use them as an example because they're kind of old Wall Street versus our new Wall Street.
Right.
Investment banks are very much siloed, very much siloed. One product line. Not only might they not communicate with another, but oftentimes they can be enemies within the same house. And that is not the case with SecondMarket. With SecondMarket, each of our markets are referring each other business, going to lunch together, socializing with their husbands and wives together, and working together and collaborating and thinking as a team rather than as these separate individual markets. And that sort of collaborative atmosphere has also been a tremendous, tremendous benefit, and one of the key aspects to the innovation that SecondMarket's been able to generate and foster.
I think that probably a lot of that is the function of the innovation that's going on at SecondMarket. I mean, really, from my perspective, and I watched the interview with Dan Rather, which was extremely illuminating, but this is really just a new idea that has taken off, and it's because of people like Barry, thinking outside the box. So what are the revenue generation streams for SecondMarket? How do you guys make money, and what are your growth plans in this area?
The primary way that we make money is through success fees. In other words, it's free to list things for sale on SecondMarket. It's free to see what's available for sale, to place bids, to view some of the data that we have on SecondMarket. The only way that we get paid is when a transaction is successfully consummated between a buyer and a seller, and then we get a percentage of that ultimate transaction. Now, having said that, we have a number of things in the works, other revenue streams that we are working on. As an example, data. We are obviously a nexus for a lot of data in the illiquid asset universe. And we are in the process of not only continuing to aggregate that data, but slice it and dice it such that we can actually start to monetize all that information that's flowing through SecondMarket. In terms of growth plans, just as a company as a whole, I'd say there's three primary methods. One, of the existing asset classes that we have, the 6 or 7 asset classes that we have, in aggregate, these are multi-trillion-dollar asset classes. So simply just keep pounding away at the existing asset classes that are trading over SecondMarket in and of itself is a tremendous growth area for us. The other two areas, one is adding on new markets. It's always our intent to add 1 to 2 new markets a year to the SecondMarket platform. And we have a couple coming up later this year, early next year, that should be fairly exciting. And then the third way is geographic growth. Right now we have a business development team, I should say, in Hong Kong who are exploring opportunities in Asia. We have a couple of people internally at SecondMarket who are focusing on Israel, primarily in the private company market space. We also have a couple of people on our corporate development team taking a serious look at the Middle East, Dubai in particular, as well as Europe is another geography that we're exploring. Asia right now Asia and Israel are our two primary areas of focus, but all those other geographic regions that I just mentioned are potential areas for growth that we're dipping our toe in right now.